Hey guys, welcome back. So last time we made a start on this user class and we created an instance of it inside our header.php file so that on every single page on our site we'll have access to this user logged in object. Okay, what I said we'll do now is expand on this user class now to actually add some functions which will allow us to return values of that user, such as their username, or we can use it to get their name, their last name, their email address and things like that. So let's do that now. So at the moment we're passing in this username but we're not doing anything with it. So what we're going to do is make a quick SQL call to the database to retrieve all the data for this user, all right? And then what we're going to do is store the result in this SQL data variable so that when we want to access any of the data for this user, we can just access this variable here. So I'll show you how that works now. Underneath this part here where we set the connection variable, let's say query equals this arrow con arrow prepare like this. We're creating a prepared statement, and we'll say select all from users, which of course is our users table, where username equals, and then put a placeholder, let's just say UN or something like that. Okay, so this is our prepared statement, our query. Underneath that, we need to bind a value to this placeholder, so we can just say query arrow bind param like that, and the value we want to bind to is of course this UN placeholder that we just created, and the value of it is going to be username like that. All right, perfect. Now we just want to say query execute. All right, make sure you spell it right though. Query execute, and then the last thing to do is to save the result of this into this variable here, and it's real simple. Underneath there, just say this arrow SQL data, which of course is this variable, equals, and then we're going to retrieve the results from this query we just executed. So query arrow fetch, this is used to fetch results, and we're going to fetch the results as an associative array. So to do that, we just say PDO colon, and then in all caps fetch associative like that. And this PDO is a built-in PHP class, and one of their static properties is this fetch associative. And basically all that means is it's going to tell, this just tells it to fetch the results as an associative array. And I've explained this before, but an associative array is just an array which has a key and a value. For example, first name will be then the value of the first name, and the last name, and then the value of the last name. Okay, so that's it. Now we have this data stored in this variable up here. Let's test it out and make sure we can use it. So underneath there, let's create another function. We'll say public function. I'm making this a public function because we want to be able to call this function from outside the class. So public function, let's just say get username like this, and let's test it out. So it takes no parameters. All it's going to do is return this arrow SQL data, and then inside the square brackets we need to put the name of the column we want to retrieve, because this will contain all the columns from the table, and the name of the column is just username, I'm pretty sure. So let me just double check that. Name of the column in users is username right here. Great. So let's save that and let's test it out now. Let's go and call this get username function. So you'll see on the index page, let me close that sign in page down, we don't need that. I'll open up the index page, and you'll see we have this part here where we echo the session variable. What I'm going to do is remove that, okay, and I'll just refresh the page just to make sure you know it's worked. I've just removed it, so you should see it go away, but we don't. We see an error message instead. So undefined variable query user.php line 10. Let's see what that is. So obviously I've spelled this wrong, so I'm sure all of you noticed that, but I definitely didn't. So let me just refresh the page after I fix that. So anyway, now you see use logged in as, because I just removed the name, so you know it's definitely taking this code. So let's actually call this function now. So do a dot, and we'll just say user logged in obj arrow get username. Now we can use this because we created it in the header file. Remember, if you go back to the header file, which we include here, we include the header file, you'll see that we have created this variable, user logged in obj, which is set to an instance of this user class. So we can access this from here now. It's fine, because we've included the header file here, we can access this variable. And all we're doing is calling the get username variable. So now if I refresh the page, you should still see the username, but we don't. We see an error message, but that's okay, we'll fix that. Undefined variable, user logged in obj. Maybe I spelled something wrong, let's have a look. User logged in obj, and I can see I've used a lowercase o. Again, you guys probably spotted that. Let's refresh the page now, and we should see a username, which we do. Great, so we can essentially do the same thing for all of the rest of the details, or any details you want. So for example, go back to user.php. Let's create some more functions which are used to access this data. So let's copy and paste that below. And I'm going to change this to get name like this. And this is going to return the whole name. So the first name and the last name is a string. So we will return SQL data, and then the column for first name is going to be first name like this. And then we're going to append a string, an empty string. This will be the space in between them. And then we want to take this part again and just do the same for last name like this. And this will be last name, of course, which is the name of the column. And then save that. And we'll go back to index page and we'll actually swap this over. So instead of get username, we'll call get name like this. And we'll make sure you spell it right. Get name, refresh the page, and we should see the full name now, which we do, Reese Kenny. Okay, so that's quite a useful function too, but maybe we're going to want the first name only. So we can create another function underneath that for get first name. Get first name, which purely returns the first name like that. All right, and let's create another one below that for get last name. So you see how this is useful now. Without this class, we would have to do this query every single time we want to access it, which can get quite tedious. Whereas now, we can simply call this every time we want to use it. So let's do the same for other things. Let's do email as well. So this can be get email. And I did just realize that I didn't change this value here. So if you've created a get last name function, make sure you update the names of the columns it's retrieving. Okay, so last name. All right, and then get email. We're going to change this to the email column, and then paste one below. Let's create one for profile pic, because when we output the profile picture, we're going to want to be able to retrieve the path. So we can say get profile pic like this, and then this will be profile pic. I think that's the name of the column. Let me just check. I've called it profile pic in the users table. We have a profile pic just like that. And the last thing we'll do right now before we finish off is just to return the sign up date. So the date the user signed up. So let's just say get sign up date like that. And then this will just return sign up date. So sign up date. And that's it for now. That's a good start. We've made some useful functions we can call at any point. And we won't use these yet exactly. We'll use some of them very soon, but for the most part, we'll use these later on in the course. All right. So that's, yeah, good start. Let me just make sure it works and there's no errors on the page, which is not. So yeah, good job, guys.